Hello, 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 Virginia's virtual viewers. Welcome to Wings of Wisdom. We have our expert on board and excited to be featuring Miss Gail Plant. She is an expert in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're going to dive deep on that. She's going to give a backdrop, a little bit about her bio and everything she has on the burner. But the common thread that we have is our coach, Miss Kim Jacobs. She teaches women how, not just women, anyone, men, gentlemen also, how to have their lives show from scratch. So if you are interested, just reach out. And I want Miss Gail Plant. She is a wife, a mother of 3 beautiful daughters, and also she has her multi-poo, Nala. So we are so grateful to have her here. So happy she wanted to be featured on Wings of Wisdom, and I appreciate her being here today. So, Miss Gail Plant, tell Virginia's virtual viewers and also our listening audience who you are, give them a backdrop of your bio and all that you have to offer our listening audience.
Sure. Hi, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Virginia, and thanks for having me on your show today. So, as Virginia said, I am a wife and mother of 3, plus 1, I call it, our puppy, Nyla. I own and I am the chief consultant for Dive Consultant, where I do professional and leadership development around diversity, inclusion, and belonging. In addition to the trainings that I do in that space, I also teach a course on self-care. And why is that important to me? It's important because in 2020, between 2020 and 2021, like many people, that was a hard time for many people. And for me, I was still working a full-time position in the office, and basically working three jobs at once. And there was a little bit of burnout in that space because my role did not allow me to work from home like many of the others within the company and just within the states in general. People working from home, I was not. So with that, in 2020, I decided to create Dive Consulting. I did all the legalities behind the scenes while still working my full-time job. And in June of 2022, I retired from the company that I had worked for 27 years. So, and Dive was born as a result of that. So that's a little bit of my backdrop around Dive and why and the how it was created.
Wow. Okay. So on the hot topic, which been hot for the last several decades in your life, diversity, equity, and inclusion, why are you so passionate about that?
I'm so passionate about it because of the value that it brings to each individual person. I think a lot of times, especially because I spent 27 years in corporate, I saw how certain people, whether it be for race, for gender, or just being different, how they were devalued as a result of what people thought of them. We always hear that term, don't judge a book by its cover. Unfortunately, Ray, we want that to be true, but unfortunately it's not. People do judge people by what they see and not necessarily what they get to know about a person. So my passion is for people to be willing to have the dialogue, to get to know people, to understand other people's perspectives so that you can see the value that everybody brings to the table. So that's the unique piece in terms of what I want Dive to be. In its existence, I want to make sure that each person that I come in contact with walks away knowing that they're valued.
Well, so how difficult is it for someone to go beyond compliance when the awareness or the inclusiveness is not in their work environment?
So it starts with you, right? It starts with me, and we have to value ourselves first, because the moment that we value ourselves, then we will demand it from everybody else. And I think there's a lot of times we have what we call negative self-talk, and we tell ourselves all these negative things about ourselves, whether it be based on experience or based off of what we've heard other people say about us, that prevents us from exhibiting the value. So it always starts with ourselves. I like to go back to Michael Jackson's song "Man in the Mirror," right? When it's about making that change, right? But we have to make a change for ourselves before we can make a change other outside of our own space. So that's why for me, it's important for people to recognize that. And when you recognize that, you then see the value, you embrace it, and then you're empowered to help others also see the value in themselves.
Wow. So how do you learn how to counter, the unconscious bias in a specific, is there a specific strategy?
So there's no specific strategy, with the exception of understanding that it exists, right? I think that one of the things that people won't acknowledge is that they have biases. And so you have to acknowledge that you have a bias. And sometimes you're not necessarily going to break through every single person, because sometimes people, they use the term bias and discrimination in the same sentence, but discrimination is a form of a bias. So you can't, they're not necessarily the same thing. And some people, you won't be able to break the mold because we all have our own experiences. Does that mean we don't try? Absolutely not. We do try to break the mold. And the first thing we have to do is educate ourselves on what is unconscious bias, right? And why does it exist? Because when we educate ourselves, we understand the perspective that somebody else may be coming from, because we all have our various different experiences, right? A lot of our unconscious bias comes from experience, from childhood, from your work, from your environment. So a lot of it comes from that, and people, don't understand. I'll give you an example. So just recently, this happened to me. I was in a conversation. I'm part of a community group, and I was part of a conversation about doing a 50-50 raffle. And people were saying, I don't think that we should do it, because if this is, an appreciation event, why are we doing it? Because the intention is for people, whoever the 50% winner is, that they're going to give their money back. So I was confused. I was like, what do you mean give it back? I said, isn't the whole point of 50-50? And when it boiled down to it, we realized that there was a cultural difference. And that the expectation and I'll just use suburbs versus city, was that, hey, yes, that's what we do here. We give the person, the expectation is that the person gives the money back, and donates the money back, basically. And that's not, like, that is not my understanding of what a 50-50 raffle is. Like, in my culture and my environment, how I grew up, we would never give the money back. And not because we're not being kind and generous. It's because those are the rules of the raffle, right? So I think when the people that I was in conversation with, they were willing to have the dialogue, right? So I think people have to approach it from a willingness perspective and be willing to want to have dialogue. That's a simple example, but guess what? Those are the simple daily examples that happen every day. And when you broach it for the small, then you'll be more apt to want to talk about the bigger topics and the bigger things. But if you keep going, and then you'll be able to keep going with it.
Yeah, it's powerful that you said about what you said about Michael Jackson's mom, because I remember an interview with her. I forget who was interviewing her, but they asked her, out of all his work that he did, what was the greatest work that she thought he had. And she, without a blink of an eye, she said, the man in the mirror.
Yeah.
So it really does begin with you. And
Yes.
that's what he said. I'm starting with the man in the mirror.
Yes.
So we have to do that inside work for ourselves. And I know you're a coach,
Yes.
you're a mentor, and not only that, you're involved in the Code Blue shelter, which
Yes.
is amazing, helping individuals. So dive a little deep on some of your outside, especially your shelter. I thought that was an amazing. It takes a special person to really want to help, want to consult, want to mentor others to get to a better place and become the best version of themselves.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So I do, I am the director of a Code Blue shelter. I am in Pennsylvania. And we started our shelter in October of 2023. And it is a Code Blue, which means that it is opened when the temperature reaches 32 degrees or below. I think someone asked that question. So yes, Code Blue is when the temperature reaches 32 degrees or below, and it's for the unhoused. And I purposely use the word unhoused. I do not use the phrase homelessness. And I'll explain why. When we created this shelter, one of the key things that I wanted to make sure that I offered our guests, which is what I call people who come to the shelter as guests, is that it was a place for home for that moment, for that 12-hour period that they are in the shelter. I want them to feel like they're at home. I want them to feel love. I want them to feel peace, because when they're not at the shelter, those are the things that they're not experiencing, because they're either somewhere having to be in an encampment or on the street. And so wanted to make sure that that was what they left with. And we have gotten those testimonies. And so I am grateful. I've been extremely humbled by the experience. We're reaching the end of our first year in season. Basically, the season, as the weather starts to change, the season ends for Code Blue. So that's what I do in that space. I'll talk a little about the self-care course that I teach. So I teach that course in multiple spaces within the community, and that was something that was not part of my original menu. I'll say, for Dive. However, as a result of my experience and just talking to others, I was like, you know what? I need to help other people in this space, and know that self-care is not about being selfish. It is exactly the opposite, because if we take care of ourselves, we're put ourselves in a better position to take care of others. And people tend to think that self-care is about, oh yeah, like take a bath or do those types of things, but it's more than that, because you're defining it. Like, you're defining what self-care means to you. And so in the course, I just offer some daily tactical things that you can do to practice self-care daily, because some people then get to a point where they are burnt out and then they want to do self-care. If you're doing self-care on a daily basis, the goal would be that you won't get to a point where you're burnt out. It'll be completely opposite, where you will know and recognize within yourself, I need to take a break. I was sharing with you, Virginia, earlier before we started. So since I've retired from my full-time job and started doing Dive full time, I got to decide what my schedule is. And so with that, I decided Monday is Gail Day. Gail's Day is Monday. So that's my personal day where I get to do Gail. And then Tuesdays through Thursdays, I take office. Those are my office hours. So that's when I typically take my meetings and phone calls and so forth. And then Fridays is almost like a personal day, except I'm a caregiver for my parents. So those are the days when I try to make those appointments. But I made that decision, and I know not everyone can do that. However, what can you do based off of your own circumstances, and make sure that self-care is in the front of that, right? It's about life-work balance, not work-life balance.
Life work balance. Oh my goodness. I love it. And our coach, Miss Kim Jacobs, she's the balance doctor. So
Yes,
she always say you got to balance it out and take care of yourself first
yes.
before you can help others. And that brings me to biblical principles. Wings of Wisdom is built on biblical principles. And that's the principle that I love to expound on. It is love your neighbor as
Mm,
you love yourself.
yes,
And also, love is the key ingredient for all things. That's why our Lord and Savior did what he did on Calvary's cross, because in St. John 3:16, it says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth on him
yes.
shall not perish, but have everlasting life." So
Amen.
it is a blessing, my dear, that you came on. And I know that getting back to diversity, equity, and
Mhm.
inclusion, you hold that near and dear to your heart. But I know you was in the tech industry. We keep saying you know, for
Yes,
almost 3 decades.
yes.
So you did that. So did you find that diversity, equity, and inclusion was prevalent there, that because you did a lot within the career where you had leadership roles in there specific in that particular area?
Yes, absolutely. So I did. So my full-time job, I like to say the job I got paid to do, was a tech role. I was in IT and a business technology leader for 27 years. However, for 25 of the 27 years, I supported the company's diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. So I was a leader in that space as well, which is a passion. And people, ask me, why did I do it for so long? And it was because I was passionate about helping people understand. And in any corporate, and I was a large corporate that I worked for. But in any corporate, you have bureaucracy, you have politics, you have all of those things, and all of that plays into the diversity, inclusion, and also belonging, right? And so we used to take a survey, and one of the questions, and this is, I think, was a turn for me, and many years ago, but we used to take a survey, and in the survey, one of the questions that was asked was, do you feel like you can be your authentic self at work?
Mm.
And for years prior, I was just answering it, yes, yes, not really thinking anything. And then it was one year it hit me, and I was like, you know what? I don't think that I can bring my full authentic self to work, or I'm not doing that. And so I answered it in an authentic manner. And from that point on, I made sure that I was bringing my authentic self to work. And what that part of that meant, that bringing all of me, not just bringing the part that did the tech work, right? Not just bringing the leader, but bringing my whole self, talking about, okay with talking about my faith, okay with talking about my Christianity in a way that it was about me and not about other people. So, for example, I used to, and my pastor, she called it my whiteboard ministry. I used to write messages to myself to encourage me on a whiteboard. And what happened was, again, the expectation was that it was for me, but what manifested was people would come by and they would see the message on the board, and it would spark conversation with people about what that message meant and what it meant to me. And then I, began to be able to share. And then someone then asked, hey, can you just, share your message, via email on a weekly basis? And I was like, absolutely, I can do that. And sometimes it didn't change weekly. It depended on, what I felt. If that message was encouraging me for a month, it stayed on for a month. So that's, one of the things that kind of sparked a different level, I guess, of passion for the diversity, inclusion, and belonging space. And the fact that I got to work and got to lead conversations, moving from the awareness to now moving to action.
Wow, this is powerful. All of my virtual viewing audience is leaning in. I know I'm trying to put them up and it's like, I hear you. I agree. I have Dr. Tina Ramsey on, and she's another coach. I have two of my coaches on. It's just amazing seeing that they love the whiteboard ministry. And my other coach, Jacelyn, oh my goodness, she said, I really appreciate how she chooses to speak to and about unhoused individuals in a more positive, respectful, inclusive manner. I will upscale my own language when addressing unhoused. Also, I appreciate her emphasis on self care for work, life, and balance. So, life, work, and balance. So, I love it. I love it, my dear. You are a true champion. I am so grateful you are leaning in. And also, if you can give some of your other handles on social media, if they want to connect with you on some of the other social sites, how can they do that?
Sure. I am on LinkedIn at Gail Plant, and on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, under Dive Consulting LLC. Try to make it easy for everyone. So those are my handles on most, with the exception of LinkedIn. You can find me as Gail Plant on LinkedIn.
Wow. So thank you once again on Wings of Wisdom, my listening audience. Like this, share this. If she had brought value to you, and if you know someone who may need her services, please, please, please share this with them. Share the episode. We are so grateful. She's a trailblazer on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And also, she embraces the differences. She's also a code blue advocate. She's an advocate in every area. She's a mentor. She's a coach. So I am grateful to have her. She is my sister with the legendary Kim Jacobs, who have brought us together. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, now is the time to pull out your electronic toys and share this episode. We are so happy that you were leaning in. And if you have any last words that you want to give our listening audience and our virtual viewers, you can do that right now.
Sure. First, I'll just say thank you again, Virginia, for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. And yes, I've acquired a new sister. So I thank you for that. One of the quotes that I love is Maya Angelou. And it's a familiar quote, but it's people will never remember what you said. People will never remember what you did, but people will always remember how you made them feel. So that nugget sticks with me because it's important on how we make people feel. And yes, it does come from what we say and what we do, but those become minute in terms of the feeling that people have. So just be kind, be generous to one another with our words and with our actions. And recognize that we're all different. God made us in his image, but we're all still different and unique in our own ways. And when we remember that, it helps us to be better people, and it helps us to be able to converse with people that are different than we are.
Oh my goodness, that is powerful. How do you make someone feel when they are in your presence?
Yes.
She is breaking barriers with diversity, equity, and inclusion. She is also building bridges. And I love the fact that she is a sister city in the brotherly love city,
Yes.
Philadelphia. And I am from Pittsburgh, PA. So we have kindred spirit, kindred cities. And I'm so grateful for my new sister because it's all about collaboration and affiliation. That is the key to acceleration. And the listening audience and the virtual viewing audience definitely appreciate you today. So if you need her services or know someone who does, please share the broadcast so that those individuals who are at a crossroad in their life will be able to get the help, get the encouragement, and get all the knowledge, tools, and resources they need so they too can soar on their own wings of wisdom. We are so happy that you leaned in. and you have a wonderful day. So happy for you, Miss Gail Plant.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Wings of Wisdom. Have a wonderful evening.